It's no secret that Christopher Nolan's films are built to perplex viewers. If anything, he loves withholding information from his audience. And if you've watched enough Nolan films, you'd know that time does not work normally in his cinematic universe. Memento, Inception, Interstellar, and Dunkirk can definitely prove that. And now, Nolan is back with another time-related film, Tenet. Hey there, and welcome back to Flick and Chips, where we talk about movies of old and new, good and bad, and basically any genre you could ever think of. Today, we have for you is the 2020 sci-fi film, Tenet. And I tell you this, it'll get you scratching your head. Time in this film has been warped in a way wherein halfway through the film, you'll barely have an idea of what the hell is going on. But then by the second half of the film, you'll realize that the film actually makes sense, but not quite. You see, he imposed the same circular storytelling from his previous films to Tenet. What happened, happened. In this film, he used the concept of inversion, wherein people and objects are able to move backward in a forward-moving reality. Messing up time and space is definitely Nolan's thing. But it's also a thing of his to mess with the characters and their psyches by distorting their reality. But did it work for this film? Not really. With this film, Nolan indulged more on building the logic, aka the logos of the film, rather than the emotions or the pathos. There's no denying that the film was heavy in physics and paradoxical concepts, which is pretty much like Inception. But again, did it work for this film? Maybe. I bet you can also agree that the film was heavy in dialogue, which can be phenomenal if pulled off correctly. However, in this film, the exposition and dialogue repressed the possibility of having any emotional connection with the characters. All this talking, yada yada. But what do the audience get? Just a ton of details that try to make up for the lack of character development of the characters. Now, let's talk about the protagonist. And by the way, he is literally called the protagonist. That's Christopher Nolan for you. The protagonist, who is played by John David Washington, went on this journey from the opera siege to taking in the suicide pill, which was apparently fake. He then gets recruited into this secret organization, learns about the inversion, and then goes into this mission of stopping a war that is propagated by an unknown enemy from the future who is using the concept of inversion. He then teams up with Neil, a British intelligence agent who is played by Robert Pattinson, and in India they meet Priya, a billionaire's wife who apparently knows more than they do. She then tells them about Andrei Sater, who is literally the Russian villain of the film. And the protagonist took all that information in quite passively. The climax didn't even feel like it was even a climax due to the lack of character disturbances and dynamics. He had no emotional depth whatsoever. His character was pretty much static from this point to that point. So I guess in order to spice it up a bit, Nolan added to the mix, and yes, you guessed it, a mother and a kid. Pretty much like Inception. Now, Andrei Sater is not the easiest person to get in contact with. I mean, he is the antagonist. That's why the protagonist had to approach Sater's wife, Kat, in order to get in contact with him. But when he met Kat, he found out that she was being controlled by Sater because she apparently gave Sater a forged painting, and Sater was definitely not happy about that. So he threatened her that he won't let her see their kid anymore if she were to leave him. Nolan probably thought that if they were added into the equation, it would give some emotional depth to the film. Probably. Somewhere along the film, Sater says this cliche line,
"If I can't have you, no one else can."
And all throughout the film, Kat was either trying to kill Sater or was being abused by him. So that pretty much sums up their relationship, to be honest. Oh, did I forget to mention that Sater was trying to end the world just because he's dying due to pancreatic cancer? Saying something like this? When I die, the world dies with me. Ugh, talk about superficial. A manipulated wife, a predictable Russian villain, a static protagonist, and oh, let's not forget about the British sidekick, who is in fact from the future and his job was to prevent the protagonist from, well, dying all along. To make things short, the abused wife ends up killing the evil Russian villain. The static protagonist and his British sidekick retrieved the plutonium before it ended up destroying the world. And by the end of the film, Neil then tells the protagonist that the secret organization that he's working for is actually led by his future self. By this time, we know that Robert Pattinson was the one who took the bullet to save the protagonist. So when Neil and the protagonist were about to part ways, Neil said this.
I'll see you at the beginning, friend.
And that is probably how far the emotional depth of this film gets. And that's that. Tenet, everyone. The film could have been shorter, right? Now, if we're going to try to make sense of the confusing story structure of Tenet and flesh it out through this story structure, we'll get this. Now, if you're going to look at that alone, you'll think, oh, I guess it does make sense. But then, if you were just to watch the film, it would have been so difficult to process the story structure while watching it. It would have been something more like this. As for the technical stuff, the cinematography was not exactly phenomenal, but it was decent. Using the concept of inversion in a film is truly original. One can't also deny that the actors performed well. Also, the fighting scenes are impressive considering that they took advantage of inversion and showed reversed kinetics. But between all that, the story was just all over the place and downright confusing. Maybe that's what Christopher Nolan was going for, a puzzle. It has always been like that for Nolan, to be able to orchestrate his filmmaking style into his films where he interweaves logic and human emotions together to create films like Interstellar and Inception. But with Tenet, beneath all that logic and details, there isn't really much to it. It tried so hard to hit the same way like Interstellar and Inception did, but it just kind of fell flat. Sure, Tenet had its moments, but it was just hollow. Was it because of the unimpressive story structure, the lack of character development, the ungodly amount of exposition? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts for this movie in the comment section down below. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed our review of this movie, please do leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, movie buffs!